Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Under Construction. I am the Admiral, otherwise... Wait a minute, wrong way around. I am Admiral Ellis, and this is Mason's Landing. We are going to do some work down here today. This is actually my main goal for today. Let me flip it into the route layer. It's been a couple of weeks since we've worked on the route, of course, because we had our route review in the meantime, which came out pretty great, if I do say so myself. I did love that railroad, and I haven't gotten the chance to talk to Jader about the feedback I gave on it yet, but I hope I do get to soon. In fact, I may in the Terminus this upcoming weekend. So, I don't have a laundry list of stuff to talk about. Maybe I should start doing that, but there is no follow-up to that. But I had a really good run there for a second, though. It sounded like I'd actually planned this show for a minute. Weird. Anyway, so I really am just looking forward to doing a lot of the texturing here in Mason's Landing for today. I know we did a lot in Mason Valley, and it's been a lot of the same in terms of doing city work, etc., 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 but at this point in time, I am really feeling this area, especially after we did this right here. This field makes me like it a whole lot better than I had previously. I'm going to do the dirt here first, and then I'm going to come back to it. This area is feeling more real now, almost, is what you could say. Before it was like I threw all these buildings down, I'm not sure, this sort of, it looks okay, but it doesn't look good. I don't know where to take this. And I made this field, and it doesn't look half bad, and so I'm going to just carry on from where we are, and that's going to be that. The area really isn't going to change. There's going to be no major paradigm shifts in Mason's Landing, which is sort of what I was afraid of having to do if I thought it wasn't coming out properly. I really should have taken some notes when I was doing that, I can see why that wouldn't work now. While I was doing that review, Because, well, Jason? Who is Jason? Jader does a good job with, his rural countryside areas, which we're definitely going to have plenty of that coming up. Alright, so now we've made the little house on the prairie. Let's add some grass. The little house on the dirt lot. Do you want to be depressed? Come live here. You're surrounded by nice green, but you're not on it. The grass is always greener on the other side because they don't let you have grass where you live. So, every week my delivery of, what I'm talking about and my jokes, etc., ends up being pretty heavily influenced by whoever I've been listening to a lot that past week. I felt myself falling into the cadence of Dramedy, a couple episodes ago, just because I'd been listening to a hell of a lot of him, as I mentioned. But now, I spent a lot of this week listening to Jim Gaffigan, and man, first of all, that guy does a fantastic job at his comedy, and it's normally, funny, with a couple of moments of hilarious just dropped in here and there, that you don't expect, you don't see coming. The jokes that you get are, pretty out of left field. One of his best, or the thing that really cracked me up at work, that just made me sort of basically doubling over at my desk, trying not to draw too much attention, because then people will ask me what I'm doing. He was talking about the M&M store, which, if you don't know the M&M store bit, I would look it up and then come back. It's really not that long. But his delivery of the description of the M&M store, it's 3 stories, because you go in the first one and buy some M&Ms, and then you go into the second floor and you buy some more M&Ms, and then you go to the third floor and jump to your death, because you wasted time in an M&M store. I absolutely didn't see it coming, because I thought he was just going to continue his, I'm fat sort of shtick, where he'd be like, you just buy more M&Ms, you buy more M&Ms, and you buy more M&Ms. And that would have been pretty funny on its own. But, I realized upon going back to it, of course, that he's spending the entire small bit ridiculing the M&M store and everyone who uses it. So obviously he's not going to be like, well, and then of course I used it. Although I could totally see it going in that direction. Yeah. Oops. I want this. Yeah, so he has those random bombs in the middle of his, otherwise normal bits, I guess, that are funny enough, but not gut-busting. I don't know, his stuff is pretty funny, typically. He is more consistent, I think, than a good number of other comedians, including John Mulaney, John Mulaney is a really great comedian in his own right, but he has a lot of skits and a lot of bits where you're sitting there listening to the story, waiting for the funny part. And it comes, eventually, it does get there, but it takes a bit. Maybe the only person I've consistently laughed harder at is Bert, and even then there's some cringe moments in there, and I don't do cringe humor very well. I had to stop watching The Office because of the cringe humor. And that was back when The Office was airing, just so I can say I'm a hipster, that I did it before everyone loved it. Not that it didn't have a huge following back in the day. If I'm gonna go on a tangent about that, I am gonna ask, what happened? Like, why is everyone in love with The Office now? Why is every white girl on Tinder just... No, I don't know that. That's a stereotype. I don't go on Tinder. I have seen plenty of Tinder. A lot of it thanks to Reddit and thanks to people in the Horsemen who do use Tinder and will spend time going through their Tinder, like, with screen share up so you can see these girls that they're swiping right and left on and going, yeah, or no, or ooh, that one. I don't know. It's a thing. Tindering with your bros. Normal. Sitting in a hot tub 6 feet apart because they're not gay. That's just what it sounded like to me. Okay, so we have this area. Again, the little house in the otherwise normal town. And then there are not going to be a lot of trees in this area. Most of it's going to be dedicated to farms or former farms that are now fallow, and then we will add some trees later. I intend to sprinkle some up and down, but you guys know my issues with adding trees. Okay, so what are we gonna do? I guess I'll continue in this direction. I don't want to get this whole thing. Of course, I can just... This is the base code, basically. I don't think I get any comments about what to do with this tram line, so I am just going to leave it for now, and I'll come back to it at a later date. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, should I continue it over here, or should all the trams just go that way? And I think I might even streamline... Like, I really love the way I have tram operations set up, and it's intricate, and it's unique, and it's pretty cool. But it's being a pain in the neck, and I may investigate more as to how to make that happen, but I don't know when. I'll do it sooner or later, I guess. Okay, let's see. We need some heftier texture over here. Where is my rocky edge texture? I totally had that. Oh, I had it up here. No, that's not the right texture. I miss having a favorites down here. Right, we don't have texture up there. What am I doing up there for? There's definitely some in Jefferson Cut. Oop. Okay. I love this. The rail line is just sort of wobbling around, and then there's the road sort of going mostly straight, but still wobbling a little bit because it's going up the hill. I don't know where this road's going. Anyway. That's the thing. When you're doing roads and rivers, it really pays to pay attention to where your roads are going and what they're made out of. Because it really, like, road networks, in reality, they make sense. I grabbed the wrong texture. I didn't grab the right texture. I grabbed the wrong texture. This is this texture, not the one that I wanted. Alright, back to up there. Oh wait, I did say that I wanted to work up here this time. Okay, well I'll come back to here shortly. We'll do this basically next. CUK rock cover. That's what I need. Game, come on. You know, it's really interesting to see. So I recently installed more dedicated WAM. Agilis had given me 8 gigs in he gave me 16 gigabytes in 2 8-gigabyte sticks. And I put those in the server because the server only has 2 slots, and I put the 2 from the server into my desktop because I have 4 slots. The ones in the server were 2 4-gigabyte sticks, so now I have a total of 4 4-gigabyte sticks in my computer. 16 gigs of RAM. It's really interesting to see my computer taking up that space and using it for programs, mostly Chrome, but also games and such, because when I ran stuff earlier, there was a pretty significant competition for space in my RAM while I was doing things like making under construction, because you boot up Tane, and especially you load into Tolbrand, and suddenly your whole computer's having a heart attack because it needs to take all those assets and put them into RAM so it can use them. And that's difficult to do when Chrome has taken every other bit or byte of RAM that is available. So, you know, it wouldn't work great. And also it would force all of the Chrome tabs to go into like a, it would make them go on the hard drive, really. It would have them go into like a memory state where Chrome could bring them back if you asked it to, but it would be a pain in the neck about it. And that actually prevented me from doing the questions or comments as easily as I otherwise could, because sometimes it would put that into a ROM memory state, or not ROM, into a hard disk space. And yeah, what would be the word for that? Limited access memory? Your hard drive? Hard memory? Hard storage? Cold storage? Lockout? Epitaph? Valhalla? Blood Gulch? Anyway, I had an awesome time the other night with Madison and her brothers. And this is something I've always wanted to do, have never been able to do before. Now that we've got 2 Xboxes in the house, we had an actual miniature Halo LAN party. As the Halo fans in the audience probably figured I was getting to by my naming all these Halo 3 map names except for Blood Gulch, which, of course, is a Halo CE map name. But you guys know what I mean, I'm sure, because you guys tend to know these things. It seems that if I bring something up, there's at least 1 or 2 people that are very big fans of whatever that thing is. Case in point, Drakeniphel from last time. Anyway, still been watching through his stuff. YouTube autoplay finally looped me back around and dropped me on something that I'd already heard. So I finally closed out the tab of Drakeniphel autoplaying and have sort of moved on to just pulling up videos of his that I notice in my recommended or that I find interesting. That was a very Drakeniphel way to talk. Also, disappointingly enough, videos that I find interesting, there has not been a Wintergaton Wednesday this week yet. It is Thursday when I am recording this, so obviously that's a little bit alarming. I hope he's okay. And and that it's just taken a little bit longer for him to put the video out, but he's never had a late video before. Honestly, I hope he's okay. I don't remember him saying that there would be not a video this week, and now I understand how you guys might feel when I drop off the face of the earth. But you guys know that I'm a little bit more lax in terms of production these days than I once was. It's part of being busy. I wouldn't say it's part of being an adult, because, I mean, I still do this. Yeah. I also, in lieu of that, I started watching, or continuing to watch, the second season of Rooster Teeth's Hardcore Tabletop, which is one of my favorite series they've put out, and the other reason that I bought a first subscription. By the way, if you guys want me to commentate on the current situation with Rooster Teeth and the animation department and the overtime, etc., you can leave a comment about that. I'm not necessarily going to get into it right away, but if you want to hear about it, I absolutely have no qualms about talking about it. So just say so. Anyway, absolute total sidebar from what I was talking about. I finally understand what the Benelux countries are after listening to Indy Nidell say them for several years. Or, well, I mean, it's probably less than a year at this point, because I totally binged, I 100% binged the hell out of The Great War, and then moved on to World War II, which, World War II, great series, look it up on YouTube if you care about World War II history at all. It's World War II week by week, and also I just watched their special that they did, Nazis on Crystal Meth, which talks about something that I did not know about, which is, well, Hitler's drug problem, for one, which was apparently quite significant and extensive, and secondly, the uses of what we would today call, hard drugs, addictive hard drugs, to fuel the Nazi blitzkrieg, basically. Because that was a thing that was done. They were literally given drugs. How friggin' bizarre is that? Anyway. Yeah. Not Hitler. One of the things they point out is that Hitler was an otherwise, I mean, aside from having a little bit in the way of delusions of grandeur and maybe depression, etc., he was an otherwise mentally stable man when not on drugs, but he was on a lot of drugs. I'm not saying we're supposed to feel sympathetic to Hitler here, because, well, he's Hitler. But it puts a lot of his questionable decisions throughout the Second World War into a different kind of light. At least a little bit. It's no longer, oh, he was a crazed lunatic that had no idea what he was talking about and had no business running an army and a nation, and, wouldn't listen to anybody and blah, 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 blah. All those things. He certainly still was, in no uncertain terms, nuts. Genocidal maniac who wanted to conquer the world. But on a strategic and tactical level, a lot of the blunders can be attributed to, well, drug addiction. Which is interesting. These are conclusions that I'm sort of drawing myself, because obviously, Indy and his team, they do go out of their way to not be biased, to not be overly brash about things that they talk about, to not draw the conclusions for you. You can draw them on your own, particularly when it comes to a relatively sensitive subject like Hitler's mindset. Which, having a Jewish girlfriend, definitely a sensitive subject. So, let me grab my other kind of grass again. Where'd I put that? over here. So yeah, I mean, I certainly recommend it. I will recommend that channel and pretty much everything else Indy Nidell touches about 100 times over, because not only is it typically exceptionally good, it is also oftentimes somewhat underfunded, and they could use a little bit more help and, of course, a little bit more attention. So absolutely go check them out. I am not the person with a Patreon. They are. So pay attention to Mr. Nidell. And speaking of things that Indy touches, Sabaton history. Because it's interesting that the two things aligned. I watched the Nazis on Crystal Meth special, and I also watched the Sabaton history on The Rise of Evil, which was one of my favorite Sabaton songs. I suppose it still kind of is, but I haven't listened to it in quite a while. Being a 9.5 minute long song, give or take, it's the kind of thing where you don't just put it on a whim. You kind of want to sit down to listen to it. And furthermore, despite the fact that, you know, if you talk to Indy or not Indy, if you talk to any of the guys from Sabaton, and even if you really pay attention to the song, it's clearly not supporting the Nazi Party. It is a little bit unsettling, I'm sure, to people, and naturally to myself, being the one that gets the funny looks, to have somebody shouting, "The Reich will rise," in public. Again, not that I'm sitting down and, you know, I'm not one of those guys on public transit with no headphones in that's blasting music, but you just don't want somebody to hear that. Certainly not in this day and age. Don't we have enough trouble with that sort of thing? You don't want people to think you're part of that problem, eh? Hail Hortler. So, anyway, I keep saying we're gonna go and we'll work on the area around Adams, and then I sit here and I do more grass and stuff around Mason's Landing. Like I have said 100,000 times, it's always that this needs to get done anyway. There's really no reason to prioritize one part of the map over another unless one thing has to come before the other. But, you know, when I say, oh, I want to work on this, and then I don't, it's, I mean, not only is it a little bit disingenuous to you guys, because I'm saying, it's a little bit misleading, I should say, to you guys, because I'm saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, and then you come here expecting that, and you get something else, particularly if you're watching this in order in the playlist, which now exists. But, you know, it's like lying to myself. Although, it's not really, because I just don't remember it. Is it a lie if you don't remember? I suppose the law would say no. Although, I'm not certain about that. They didn't cover that in my go-to sources. My Cousin Vinny and Law & Order SVU. Okay, that's... part of that is a joke. Law & Order SVU, or Law & Order in general, or most crime dramas on television are really not the best sources when it comes to getting information about how a courtroom works, and how courtroom proceeding goes, etc., etc. My Cousin Vinny, on the other hand, is not only a fantastic and hilarious film, it is praised for accurate depiction of courtroom proceedings, and I've probably talked about that before. I adore that film, and I would watch it many times over. It is rare for me to want to watch a movie again. Most of the time I go to the, if I see a movie in theaters, especially, I go, wow, that was a great experience. And that's that. I don't generally go out and watch a movie again unless, A, I'm showing it to someone, or B, I really, really like it. And there are not many movies that fall into category B. Not because I don't like movies, but because the bar is really high. And even then, I'll just make an excuse to fit them into Category A to not admit that they're in Category B and that I'm watching them on my own. Because there's so much new content out there on a regular basis that it's hardly like you ever have to rewatch something. This isn't, even 20 years ago, where you didn't have a limitless stream of content on the internet and a DVR and, the ability to go in and having on demand and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You didn't have all these things that you otherwise do have. I think we need kind of a seawall here, I think. I said I think twice. Nice job. Or should I have like a wharf here? I don't know. Because I'm thinking like offloading of coal barges here, maybe. Could make this area look a little bit more built up. Yeah, let's do a little bit of that. Also, I think the, I did a lot of work in my garage recently, and I think it's starting to catch up to me in terms of the poison ivy. It might have taken a little bit to get to me, but it's definitely here, at least in some capacity, because my foot's itchy. Unless there just happened to be a bug bite, but there's something itchy on my wrist too, and that would be one of the likely places that, that would cause trouble, I guess. For me, specifically for me, because of what I had on, which I did do my best to cover myself as much as possible, because I hate poison ivy. But I mean, the character's kind of hot, but the plant, no, get that out of here. So yeah. Oh, I didn't even say Benelux. Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. Benelux. It all makes sense to me now. Anyway. Okay, we got some Z fighting going on. That means you did a good job. Yeah, that looks terrible, so let's not do that. Okay, here's what I'll do. I'll have like a little slipway or something for it. Or maybe I'll just do... this? We need our retaining wall, which we have over here somewhere. Because these things typically don't just stand alone, Okay. I hope I blew somebody's mind with the Benelux things. Maybe other people just paid way more attention than I did. Always a possibility. A likely one at that. Now, one of the other things that, I'm getting... I have a couple of minor itches on me, whatever. I get super paranoid when it comes to stuff like that, especially now that I own a house. And it's like, oh crap, it could be like bed bugs or something. Now, where would I get bed bugs? Well, you see, when you own a place that doesn't have like central air, you put in air conditioners in the windows. I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with this. When you put an air conditioner in the window, you have those little things, the wings that extend on the side that are completely worthless and you should never even bother with. I mean, extend them for show so it doesn't look crappy, but then what you gotta do is you gotta go and you stuff foam in the window. And I mean, of course, this household has no problem with a supply of foam, but somehow we ran out. And so my dad's solution, being the ever-handy person that he is, was go find a couch that's sitting on the side of the road that somebody's throwing out, and steal one of the cushions off it, specifically the bottom cushions, because they've got cushions, because they've got, like, spring in them. They're a little bit more, whatchamacallit, a little bit more formed. So, just go and get those. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. Let me go do that. And so the other day, I found a couch sitting on the side of the road. I stopped the car. I picked it up and put it in the back. I put the surviving bottom cushion, which now there is a cushionless couch sitting on the side of the road. Because somebody had stolen the other one, and it actually looked to me like someone had also had this same idea and taken the other bottom cushion. Either that, or when it was put out on the side of the road, the other bottom cushion had already mysteriously disappeared, which, I mean, the couch was in rough shape and did not smell great, probably because it had been raining. It was the source of the smell in small part, or in some part. But I was like, oh, this thing's gross. Let me just toss this one cushion in the back of the car, call it a day, and I'll put it in the garage. I'll take the casing off, and I'll, get rid of it, whatever. It's like, okay, now that's taken care of, now what? So now I'm just leaving the foam in there. Hopefully it will just continue to exist in there and not be a problem. And not just, like, start decomposing on me, which it probably shouldn't because it's foam. But I do definitely worry that, like, great, now I've introduced some pest into my house. Of course I have. It would be mostly it would be exceptionally poor timing if that were the case. However, I doubt that is the case, because I want to live blissfully ignorant. Now, I doubt that is the case because it just, oh, I'm itchy. It so happens to be right after we spent like a whole day playing in Poison Ivy, a couple days afterward, and now I've got a couple of small, whatever. Where did that one go? I had one on my wrist. On one of my wrists. And also one on my foot. Oh, it was on this side of my wrist. There it is. Yeah, it looks to me more like Poison Ivy. Which, not the first time I've had Poison Ivy. How do I know I don't like it? Because I've had it before, and it's a pain. So, when I was little and I got Poison Ivy, or when I was little I didn't get Poison Ivy, and then I grew up a little bit, and then I got a little bit of Poison Ivy, and it didn't itch, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm immune, this is not half bad, and then I got Poison Ivy again, and it was like, this sucks, so I grabbed the wrong texture again. I need to not keep doing that. It's the second time in a row now. 1,000 millimeter ground. Have I not said before that they should really just call it 1 meter ground? I feel like it's more simple that way. Or simpler, whatever you want to call it. Okay. I don't know. Now I'm distracted. I need to get to the comments. Let's see. What are these comments? We've got a few. Wow, Railord. We'll get to you in a minute. This sounds like something I'd want to have, lol, says Naleen. Naleen, you can download an older version of this. It only has Olive, but it's something. On the download station, if you look up Tolbryn, Tolbrynd, it should be the only thing there, and it has a session with it. So, there's that. If you want it, you can have it. If you want this version, which I'm not comfortable giving out this version yet because the trams are still broken, But if you do go on Skype and pester me about it, I will get a lot closer to releasing it much quicker because, or well, the beta release or whatever you want to call it, the private release. If you ask me personally, I'll give you a copy of the route, is what I mean. On Skype at Bombs321, I will do that. It's just, it will take me time to patch up the tram system and figure out what I'm doing with it. Which is why I did mention last episode that I really want to know what people hope for, /expect, /want out of the tram system. I know Chris wants me to shoot a little lower than I'm currently shooting, but I do want to have the 24-hour cycle of they're running most of the day and they go in the car barn in the evening and then they come out again. The thing I might need to do, like I said, is experiment with like schedule rules and stuff like that to make it less absurd when it comes down to gosh darn it, what am I saying? That is not coal. Oh my god, what am I saying? When it comes down to putting all the commands out, just to make my life easier, to make there be a lower number of commands. I even went and I was going to start this episode and I went, you know what, I should eat. Because the last time I didn't eat before an episode, I was all over the place, I didn't know what I was talking about, I was basically speaking gibberish. And here we are, I did eat, and I'm doing the same thing. Also, I don't like the fact that I can't see the ties. Whoops, no, do that. But yeah, if you want this map, you can get it. It is actually freely available, or part of it is. Is that hovering? Hope not. If it's hovering, I only want it hovering a little. That's fine. Okay. Brady cured. 3355, yes, you would, to keep trespassers out. What did I say? Oh, that's loud. But it is what I'm doing. It is what it is. Oh yeah, the fences are on the farm fields. I mean, sometimes not. Anyway, sorry, distraction. Hey Ellis, been a little while since I commented, but I have an idea. So this is coal from VMR, maybe, and iron from a narrow gauge railroad, maybe near Summit. I'm not sure exactly to what you're referring to, but we definitely will have both of those. The GMR, the narrow gauge, the Geiger Mountains Railroad, as people who have been on this channel for a very, very long time will know, the Geiger Mountains Railroad is most known for its wood hauling. However, there is a not insignificant amount of coal that gets brought in from the Geiger Mountains. The Geiger Mountains mostly uses the coal for itself or delivers it elsewhere, and you'll notice there wasn't a... sorry, that's not true. There is a coal transfer in... did I just do a total tautology? It makes it itself, or it uses it itself, or it brings it elsewhere? What else would it do? Chuck it in the dumpster? We don't need this coal anymore. We're moving on to the future. We're gonna make wind-powered engines. That was a total guy was talking about earlier thing. Anyway. Okay, so let's get this. Yeah, but the Geiger Mountains is most known for its wood hauling, but does haul a lot of coal down from the mountains. The Gilson Eastern, who has the strongest ties with the GMR, doesn't really get any coal of its own. All of its coal comes from either it deals with the Zion and Skyline, or deals with the GMR. I have to hesitate so I don't say the wrong railroad. Give me that Oz Forest Floor Darker. Who texted me, or was this an email? Oh, crud, that's a text. Nobody texts me unless it's important. I think Matthew Bacon, I think Matthew Bacon just wrote a comment on this episode while I was doing a thing. Let me make sure. Or maybe he responded to my comment on a different video. But I don't think so. Did he? Let's find out. Live! F it, we're doing it live. Oh, okay, no, it was a joke on the Mattapoisett thing. Okay. So yeah, and the iron ore will mostly be either from the GMR or from the VMR. The Zion and Skyline almost exclusively deals in coal and long-distance passenger trains, which they make a lot of money on, but don't run frequently. Or, well, previously made a lot of money on. As well as being a major east-west route. In fact, the only major east-west route left on the peninsula. So they do make a lot of money that way, but the Heartland area that I haven't really developed yet in terms of backstory doesn't have a whole lot of reason to ship directly out of the peninsula. The only reason to do is because there's a large port there. And that's not insignificant, but it's not that significant. There are other places to ship to that you don't have to go over a mountain range for necessarily. Alright, let me... Okay. I love these retaining walls. I love you, Bonus Fry. Jim Gaffigan going on about McDonald's just makes me feel funny because I don't McDonald's at all. I'm like, yeah, I can sort of relate, I guess. Anyway. Okay, those are 3 things. Evangeline. Sup? Finally got around to watching this. Hello again. Hey! I'm glad to see you in the comments. I hope I can inspire you at least maybe a little bit. I think the Mouse River could flow from the lake that's up in the mountains there. It's just on the other side of the big empty gap. So there's a reason that can't happen. And I'll get to that in just a minute, but I want to fill this area in with grass first. So, I will get to that. But, what I will point out is the reason why it's such a pain in the neck that I put that river there and then forgot about it. Because, just like with the roads, like I said, you have to be consistent on one side of a big hole to the other. And I pointed this out to an extent in the Mattapoisett zombie train, where I noticed that Jader's roads and his rivers, while they don't explicitly not line up, there's nothing saying that things don't, or, there's nothing that contradicts the position of any of his stuff. There's nothing inherent to it. But they don't necessarily line up either. There are a couple of reasons why it doesn't, work, or why it may not work, why it's a little bit more far-fetched than other ways that you could do it. I mean, one of the reasons is that if you're that close to a river, you're going to have some sort of slope. I know that's not always true, and I'm just saying that, and it's, if you're out by the Mississippi River on the Great Plains, things are pretty damn flat, but it's because they are consistent and flat. They may still have a gradient, but that doesn't mean they're not flat. If you're understanding my meaning. Like, if you take a cutting board and you look at it, it's flat, obviously. Cutting boards are flat, generally, or else they wouldn't be really good cutting boards. Maybe the ones around here are a little less flat because we've sort of attacked them brutally. But, you know, sometimes the carrots really deserve it. So, while a cutting board may be generally flat, if you tilt up one end, it's still flat. Now it's just at an angle. It may not be laying flat on the table, or flat on the counter, or whatever you have it on, flat on the floor, flat on the roof of your car, if that's where you happen to have a cutting board. But it's still a flat object. But that's the thing, and Jader actually did a fairly well job of selling that to an extent. If you look at the gradients on the map, you can see that the railroad does have a slight gradient coming out of Mattapoisett. And that's smart. That's accurate and good. You know, you would have a little shelf down by the water, and similarly you would have a shelf by a river too. It might just be extraordinarily wide. But you would still eventually climb out of that. It would be the edge of where the floodplain is. By an ocean, it might, you know, even be significantly steeper. Of course, there are some places in the world that the ocean is basically at the edge of an enormous cliff. The peninsula that I visited in Italy that I forget the name of all of a sudden, it's very famous, is a prime example of that. It is this extremely rocky peninsula. But at the same time, if you have an area that was covered by glaciers and pretty much exists because of, you know, sediment and rocks and such left behind by that glacier as the glacier receded, as is a lot of the coast along the eastern United States, for example, and Canada, where that route is, you would have a relatively flat or gently sloped area close to the shore. And as you back up, then you would hit the point where the rock was before the glacier showed up, and then things would go up a little bit. But I do mean a little bit. When glaciers come around, they tend to wear everything down heavily. And that shows. But you're left with a quagmire of lakes and such from where the glaciers didn't fill in with sediment, where there are just, you know, there are gaps around that area where there was more sediment in the glacier, and then there's the hole where there was not as much sediment, and so you have a depression in the earth because of that, which fills in with water. It's called a kettle lake. Well, that's part of it, I believe. It's been a long time since I took that geology class in college. It hasn't been that long, but really, I don't use geology in my everyday life, or work, or life. So, yeah. I do use it here, often, and in doing route reviews, I don't feel like you should need a geology degree to make a half-decent route. But it would definitely help in terms of getting the terrain right. So, you know, there's that. This is not good. But I will explain now why I can't do what TBA or Evangeline suggested I should do. That looks terrible. We'll just do that. It looks marginally better. So the Mouse River here, it winds its way up into the mountains, crosses that, goes, into here. But this lake, which is where he's talking about it connecting to, already has an outlet. I haven't actually done that, and I need to come back here and do it, because this is one of the things that I did and then lost to a crash. But yeah, this has an outlet. The thing is, I mean, not only is there a large mountain range in the way that would also present problems, or a not insignificant number of mountains at least. The thing is, if I have it go to here and then also somehow go to the Mouse River, that would be river splitting. It wouldn't be as egregious as river splitting sometimes is. Of course, for those who do not know, river splitting is when you take one river and you split it into two, which is very, very unrealistic and happens very rarely in nature. Because water tends to take the path of least resistance, there are typically not two equally unresistant paths for water to take, and thus water will take the single path of least resistance, with a second path typically only forming when there is a huge amount of water that needs to come through, and the path of least resistance is actually not that unresistive. Where it actually does have some resistance because you have to go through a tight space or whatever. I'm sure you could hear the Drakenfell coming out in that sort of cadence that I had right there. Anyway, so yeah, that's why I can't really do that, because A, there's a mountain range in the way, B, it would be river splitting. Sort of. You're at a lake. Still not good, though. And C, because even if I were to ignore all of that, it would involve me modifying existing terrain, and then could instigate a round of, well, why isn't it like this if there's a big hole in the mountain range here? Why isn't there a road that goes through here? And why doesn't the rail go through here instead? And why doesn't this? And why doesn't that? See, the thing is, once again, it's really important to be internally consistent with your world. And that can come in a variety of forms, but it's not just about the roads and the railways going the right way. It's about the logic of them going that way being consistent. You know, if you have the roads typically only run in this direction because there's no commerce east to west, for example. I'm making this up completely. The roads typically run north to south in this area because there's no commerce east to west. Then that makes sense, but if you then go ahead and build an east to west road, then you have to justify it. And if you've justified it, you need to justify it in a way that doesn't open the door to, well, why aren't there more east to west roads if this one is justified? It's a really kind of weird sticky wicket you can get yourself into. I love using that word. Never get to. But just by doing one thing to make an area look better. Adding an industry, or even an abandoned industry. Everything, in my mind, everything needs justification. Obviously, if you're building your own trains route and you're keeping it for yourself and you're not doing anything with it, blah, 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 you don't need to care about any of this at all. Because it's your route, you do what you want with it. It literally, nobody's grading you unless you give it to me to actually grade. Nobody's going to come around and be like, no, well, that's wrong. Oh, you did that wrong. That looks stupid. Why'd you do that? If I'm looking at your route in any way, shape, or form, I will probably ask, why is this like this? And if you have a good explanation for me, then that's awesome. That's the kind of thing that makes me very happy. And, I mean, it should make you particularly proud if, A, you came up with one on the spot and it was really good, or B, you had one ready. Because it means that either you were very creative and you're, good on the jump when it comes to somebody asking you sort of a weird question, almost. You can put that creativity to use at the drop of a hat. That's really good and impressive. But the latter means that you thought it through, which is also really good. I don't know. I love lore, what's his name? Jake Rail posted a comment on the review I did of his railroad recently. I didn't do the review recently, he posted the comment recently. But he gave this detailed thing about about the railroad, about a number of different things. And I was like, wow, I never knew that you put that much time and effort into coming up with a backstory for this railroad. I don't know why I'm surprised that you did. In fact, I really wasn't, because he's the kind of guy that absolutely would. He cares about that stuff a lot. And that was his, the Green Gorge was his baby. But I had just not known that much about it, and he had told me some of it before, but it had largely left my mind since then, because it's been a while since I played on the Green Gorge. Even though it has been in recent thoughts, because of me going through all those narrow gauge cars and finding the Green Gorge ones. So, yeah. And it made me think a lot about his reasoning for all of his stuff, and thinking about, ooh, I wonder how sound it really is. I wonder where the holes can be poked, and where the realism is stretched a little bit, and that sort of thing. I mean, it made me think a lot about the railroad itself, because of course it did. But at the same time, I was certainly thinking about just sort of in a very meta way about the lore. Because lore is something it's difficult to get straight sometimes. The Iron Horseman is one of those series with that sort of issue from time to time. From time to time. No comments necessary on that. No, I mean, honestly, for the most part, aside from the weird junctures with the Warships universe lore, which they are the same universe as we've established, but because one was written and then the other was written and then it was decided that they are one and the same, things don't totally line up, but we did do our best. So, it's something. Otherwise, it's I believe it's fairly consistent. There are only a handful of things and there are some things where we'd like to retcon them or stretch them or whatever, and just to make things fit a little bit better or feel a little bit better, because things have changed since we started writing the series, and it's like, oh, maybe that wasn't smart. Maybe making this character this way or whatever. Maybe that was, maybe that just doesn't feel right anymore. Maybe it should have been like this, or maybe it should have been like this, or, whatever. It's weird when you're making characters out of things that otherwise exist in real life, and it's, it's easy to run into well, how do I make it so that it's really, how do I make it good enough to represent, what's effectively or very nearly reality. I really need to add... I feel like I need stones. I need just rocks and stones. What is this? Soil cracked. That's not what I want. No, I don't know what the hell that thing was. I need a jetty sort of thing. Come on. What was somebody said something about scrolling through textures? Oh, it was Railord. Alright, here we go with Railord's comment while I'm busy looking for this. Whoa, what are these? Oh, it's street stuff. Yeah, I would like some stones, please. 1 order of stones. Railord says, for some reason, listening to B.B. King works with watching this. Maybe it's because it's B.B. King. I'm not familiar with B.B. King. Who is he? If you want to explain, go ahead. Anyway, when barreling through the assets, you could click the plus sign of the content search filter to add a filter type. Is that this? Oh, crap, that's what this does? Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I never even noticed that plus sign before. I will definitely do that. I didn't know there was a way to filter that anymore. That sort of thing. I thought those tags were almost completely irrelevant and only mattered, like, in weird niche scenarios. I mean, I suppose in a way that it doesn't, it still is kind of niche to go up there and add a filter and whatever, but... And the filters weren't always great back in the day anyway. But, that is useful. Let's see. That actually looks pretty good. I think. Yeah, it does. Wow. Alright, sweet. That's good. I like that. You like that. Select a payware equals false. That should get rid of all N3V payware. It would be nice if they included on DLS in-game, though, instead of just the content manager. Yeah. That would be useful. But, oh well. I mean, we used to have a pretty useful thing down here that would tell us if we were using one on DLS or not, but unfortunately that's gone the way of the dodo. I'm convinced that it is likely a bug, because they didn't remove the option. And I don't know why they would remove that, although maybe it's because nobody was using it and it was becoming a pain for whatever reason. It maybe stood in the way of whatever advances they were trying to make. I don't know, code is spaghetti oftentimes, so there may have been an issue with it. And it possibly is related to something like using third-party assets in Surveyor, although I wouldn't be convinced of that. It's the only thing I can think of where third-party assets matter. So, that's my single thought about that subject. I generally don't like to sit around and go, rah, N3V is so stupid, they did this, that, and the other thing. Oh my god, they're idiots, dumb. I quite like their game. So, I'm not going to be too mean. Rail Lord goes on to say... Also, I'd like to suggest the 70-ton ore car, 70T ore car, to be included in the Gilson Eastern freight car list. On the DLS, search for 70-ton ore car. Let me just look that up real quick. 70-ton. Oh, you know what? On the DLS, that might help. Ore car 70-ton. Oh, wow, that's cool. Yes, I want those. The Ore Jenny, to be included in the Gilson user figure list. The little buggers come in 5 flavors under the DLS. On the DLS, under Milwaukee Road, or MILW, UP, DMIR, CNNW, and CN. MILW also has a 20-ton wooden ore Jenny under CNNW as CNNW wooden ore car, or CNW wooden ore car. If you include an iron ore mine on the map, then you could probably move about 100 Jenny trains to and from the steel mill. That way you could also eliminate taconite/iron pellets if you wanted. How would that eliminate those two? Question. Maybe I don't know enough about steel manufacturing, but, enlighten me, please. Because when it comes time to do the steel mill, I intend to try and do everything right and get the commodities set up right, etc., etc. There are certainly going to be situations where I'm going to screw it up, and I'll need to bring in something from off-map instead of having something on-map delivering it. But, I mean, such is life, I guess. If I remember everything I need for the steel mill, I will do my best to try and do that. I want to get most of the major consumer industries done before I start working on the producer industries. That way I know that if I create a consumer industry that takes something kind of unusual, I will be able to make a producer industry to go with it without making major changes to the route or whatever. So, yeah. The route or the automation, because if it's something like I'm making a steel mill that needs like limestone, but I've already built all the mines and I already have them mostly automated, at least to a pretty good extent. Then I realize, oh crap, I don't have taconite anywhere. Well, what if I add I don't have a limestone quarry anywhere. What if I add one and then have a train that goes to it, and how do I interface that with all the other trains that already are automated, running this line, blah, 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 I don't know. It can get out of hand really fast. Going back and changing things is difficult. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I started working on this map was to include all of those main industries that we're so used to from old school trains, the lumber mill, the pulp mill, the forestry, that sort of thing. And I do intend to include them, but I intend to include them solely as backups. Like, currently the lumber mill, etc., in Olive, is only really operating in the plan, is only really operating insofar as we don't have enough goods to keep the balance. So if that is a problem, which it probably will be, then I can put more or less through there, and I have it set up, especially on my spreadsheet, as a formula which will, basically keep me informed of how much is going to have to be pumped through that industry in order to make things even. Admittedly, we don't really need to do that. We don't really need to make things even, but I'm trying to make it simple and have that happen. We can have another town balance it out. Or even we can have stuff come from off map. But, such is life. It's not to make things more artificially more difficult. It's actually to make things a little bit easier by knowing that the boxcars are pretty much going to have to return to the same spot that they started in. Keeping things balanced means things just get looped more. And, of course, I could always just run it like locomotion and have a unit train of these cars go here and then it comes back. But I don't really want to do that. I do want to have a little bit in terms of interesting switching that the AI does. But we will see what that all entails in the end. Alright, we did this. Quite happy with how this came out. What about this area here? Maybe this will stay forested. 4810. Quote, "To set things straight, Tucker, if we're going to do this, it has to be done the right way, or there's no point in doing it at all, okay? There's an order to things, Tucker. An order." Every time I think about there's an order to things, just in general, or, things need to be done in order, that quote, at least, the sort of end of it, the tail end of it, because it echoes and goes into the next scene. Or even the next episode, I think. Can't really remember. It sticks in my head so well. I don't even know why. It's just, it is what it is. It sticks in my head. I love Red versus Blue. I love it so much. And I wish I could, steal more quotes from it and stuff like that. But, I always think about Church's last speech in, an episode, or in the final scenes of episode. The final scenes of season 13, right before the battle where everything freezes and he gives his really, really well done speech. Really, really, and it's almost so rare to have a piece of media approach something, especially what is a relatively timeless concept as the hero's sacrifice in such a new and unfamiliar way. But I suppose that's just... it'll happen from time to time. It'll just, there'll always be the opportunity for someone to, to find that new way, however tenuous it may be, but this was not tenuous at all. I can't really put into words how much I love the end of season 13, and Church's speech about, oh, you know what, I guess I've sort of removed the idea that the trolley is coming over here because I'm filling it with grass now. So that's what it is. Yeah, and there's no way, because they're not double-ended cars, so I can't have them be like, whatever. I could have another loop here, but God, that would be kind of weird, wouldn't it? So this is why you need to pay attention when you're building stuff, because you'll eventually lock yourself out of certain options just by building, Yeah, I can't describe how much I love that scene, that speech, just the meaning behind it, of the hero, if they sacrifice themselves, they'll never know if the day is truly saved. In the end, you just gotta have faith. And God, it gets me. It's so good, and obviously, it's meant to. I'm totally falling as a sucker for something that was totally designed to make me do that, but that doesn't make it any worse. In fact, that makes it better, because it means it was well designed. Gosh, I don't know, I can't talk about that enough. I love Red vs. Blue. Just as someone who's a fan of science fiction, I love Red vs. Blue, but it's just... sometimes sci-fi spends too much time in the drama category and not enough time in the fun category. And science fiction in general doesn't have to be any one kind or another. It's a really, really broad scope. And it's nice to find one that's a funny one. You sit down and you watch Galaxy Quest. You're not there to watch, Captain Picard solve a moral dilemma. I almost said Captain Kirk, but, let's be honest, the man didn't solve too many moral dilemmas. It's hard to find one that really does a good job of riding the line between comma and dramedy. Or comedy and drama. Wow, comma and dramedy. I think I found the name of this episode. I always think dramedy, though, when it's like, when there's a and there might be a semi-official term for it, but when there is a drama with comedy elements, it's sort of a dramedy. And, I want more of a sci-fi dramedy than I do want a space opera, which is space opera being the informal term for basically a science fiction soap opera, where it's, it's all drama. Which a space opera was very much, like, it went in that direction Stargate did, I'm saying, to clarify what I'm talking about. You had SG-1, well, okay, you had Stargate the movie, which was a fairly serious film. It had its moments, but it was not a comedy. And then you had SG-1, which you brought in Richard Dean Anderson, and it was suddenly hilarious. There were plenty of dramatic moments, and it was more of a drama than anything else, but there was enough comedy in there to keep you cracking up at just the little things while you were taking in the drama. So it was a dramedy. It was more drama than comedy, but not by a whole lot. And SGA, it rode the line a little bit. I remember SGA almost being funnier than SG-1 at times. Or being funnier than SG-1 at times. Or at least being sometimes more consistently funny, or even a little bit more subtly funny with just the character interactions. I don't know, I love Stargate Atlantis, I own all 5 seasons. But then you get to Stargate Universe, which is really what I'm trying to get to here, and suddenly there's a lot more drama. There's a lot less comedy. And I get that the stakes are higher, but the stakes were pretty high in Stargate Atlantis. Especially for the first season, where they are in fact trapped. They're in a galaxy far, far away. They're dealing with a parasitic alien race, which will literally suck the life out of you through their vagina hands. And they need to somehow survive in a city that they barely understand. It's in fairly good repair, but they don't have any goddamn power. Destiny is almost like the opposite. They've got power for days. That thing refuels in stars. Spoilers, I guess. But there's a pretty limitless amount of stars out there. It's kind of hard to run out of those, despite the fact that they did have trouble on more than one occasion, and it lended itself to a lot of the conflict in the latter part of the show, getting into a star to refuel. However, unlike Atlantis, the Destiny is in terrible repair when they get to it, and they aren't supposed to be there. That's the other part, where the stakes are raised even higher. This is not the Atlantis expedition where they got to bring all this equipment and supplies with them. They were just like, oh, we're figuring this thing out, this is really cool, we're getting it to work, this is awesome. Oh crap, we're under attack, evacuate, we have to go through the gate, we have to go to Destiny. You could almost say it was their destiny to do so. I would call it irony, but it's really not, it's more of coincidence. But I really just wanted an excuse to do the Palpatine ironic. Weibel had a moment on the trip where he and I turned to each other and said that in almost exactly the same tone at pretty much exactly the same time, and it was possibly one of the best moments. Okay, no, it wasn't, but it was really funny. It was incredible. It's nice not being, on Skype, so things are actually synced up. It's nice not being, on the other side of a monitor, so you can look at one another and realize that the other person is thinking the exact same thing, instead of just, staring into the silence and going, I think they're thinking what I'm thinking. I've gotten totally off track here. We've got, let's see, how much longer? Whoops. We've got 45 minutes. 105. Blah, blah, blah. You can actually play OpenTTD in 32 BPP, whatever that means. Resolution, the in-game content manager, bananas. Don't ask me why it's called that, I have no clue myself. Has two 32 BPP sets available, A base and Z base. Once downloaded, you can switch between OpenGFX and one of the two in the game option screen. Personally, I prefer the pixely charm of 8 BPP over 3D for the game, but to each their own. That's interesting. Maybe I'll have to look into that more if I ever, again, sit down and seriously consider playing OpenTTD, which I know, everyone wants me to play the thing. I know, I get it. Not saying don't keep telling me to, because the more I hear about it, in some ways the more I want to. And I know that there is a server that somebody in the Horsemen runs, or at least plays on significantly enough, commonly enough, that it's out there. If I said, hey, I want to play, can you guys set me up with a place where we can play together? They'd go, yeah, we have one. Where have you been? And, absolutely, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm sitting here doing this instead of what I said I was going to do. Again, I'm over here. 109.30, if you're going to do that, get a DEM and route the IHR through it, you might have to pull a coastal or Volga Mountains. Long trains, long sidings every now and then. Limited dual-track main. I didn't really want to deviate from the way the IHR is set up, but at the same time, it definitely would make sense, especially for the main pass, to be a single-track line that is very limited on number of trains it can serve at a time. And that would make sense with the fact that the other secondary line is kept around in the first place. Aside from the fact that it serves a lot of areas that the shorter route doesn't. The fact that they're all double track except for over the bridge is a little bit unrealistic. I mean, for the amount of trains that the Iron Horseman serves or runs on a daily basis, you don't really need double track anyway. But, it is what it is. We figured it would look better then anyway. Also, the other thing is, if you're modeling a fairly good-sized railroad, which the IHR, in reality, would probably be like a Class 2, pretending it's a Class 1, but is almost a Class 3 in terms of size. They just happen to own a lot. The whole thing, you'd be running a lot more trains than are ever shown in the Iron Horseman Chronicles. I mean, the reason for that is, if you were to have a series where, with a realistic number of engines, either you have a very small railroad, or you will not remember any of those characters. At least if you try to shine the spotlight on all of them. I mean, the Iron Horseman, to an extent, has that problem, where there are a lot of characters, but at the very least, we tend to go from character to character, trying to do our best to make episodes about those specific characters. Trying to make sure that everyone gets their shot in the limelight, everyone gets a chance to be recognized by the audience, and that it's hard to forget a good portion of the characters. There are definitely characters that can be forgotten. I mean, Dan only shows up from time to time, and while he is memorable in the episodes that he is in, he tends to just be not around the rest of the time. That isn't because he's in timeout. That is just because it's kind of hard to work him into an episode without him being really important in the episode, because he tends not to do something unless it's about him. And his interactions with the other engines are not the most peachy things. He's probably the most disliked engine, even above Eric, who isn't everyone's favorite, that's for sure. And of course Mark, who people don't like for obvious reasons, but people don't hate him. He's just Mark. Anyway. But also, the twins, Doyle and Eric, I can understand if you don't think about them particularly often. Or Leroy. I mean, he's the big boy, and he's had a starring role a couple of times. And not insignificant roles, for sure. But he doesn't show up all that often. Andy's another one, although Andy is more of a more recent arrival. There are engines which I doubt people will forget. Most of these being the Troy-based engines, Chris being one of them, even though he's relatively new. But Sally and Sam and Blount and Bell, even though he's not there all the time. Lee, Cole, and Nick, of course. Some engines are unforgettable, not because of how often they are shown, but because of who they are. Like Sandy and Rangeley. And, I mean, that is what it is. And Big Joe being another one in that category. But, we have a lot of characters. We do. Because we have a railroad that is of a moderate size, and you tend to have more than a small amount of engines. And even then, if you were to have a small railroad that may be connected to a bigger one, so you could just have a slightly larger pool of characters, in reality, you probably wouldn't meet the same engines on the main line every day. And in fact, you might see some engines only once or twice over the span of a career. They would run this job, and then they would just be shuffled off, and maybe they'd come back at some point, but, the engines keep on moving down the system. They might not necessarily come back to their old assignments. I'm really liking this. We spent a lot of time doing it, but I am really liking it. Okay, continuing with this. Currently, TRS-19 doesn't have a unified surveyor driver, but they're working towards it. Last I've seen is that they've released it to external testing. Despite a few teething troubles, it's said to be working good. Honestly, I'm kinda hyped for that, but I'm unsure of whether they're getting rid of the separate things. I don't know if they're getting rid of the separate things. I'll have to ask Milky about that. The only reason I know about the fact that they have released it to beta testing is because Milky has that. He's in that group. He has all the cool stuff, and he was posting pictures of him driving and surveying it once. And I think we talked about this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. He was playing Wallace and Gromit with his trains and letting them just drive along at very slow speeds, laying down track in front of them. That would be kind of an amusing route build competition, I think. Alternately, or actually this may work even better, if you can do it in multiplayer in teams where one person is driving the train over a pre-existing landscape, and the other person is laying track in front of them, and it's whoever gets to the end first, without doing something ridiculous like putting a tunnel through the whole thing. You might even want to enforce a rule that you can't do tunnels. Or hovering bridges, for that matter. You'd have to spend a lot of time making sure people would pay attention to the honor system in that case. But, I mean, with the people that we're working with, I would sort of trust some of them. We should do another route build competition, but it just takes a lot to do. Speaking of route building, and about things that take a lot of time, an idea for a show popped into my head, and I am going to talk about it enough to get it out of my head. Because I am never going to be able to do it. Even though it wouldn't admittedly be all that hard. It would be an extra couple of hours a week working on the route, and that's it. And that, yes, this route. No, it's not live streaming. It's in fact the opposite. It's sort of a return to form of my older videos, where I would record 4 videos at once, break it down, break a 2-hour recording into 30-minute sections, and then post them one by one. And it would be called the Daily Dose. Or something to that effect. And I would be making daily 30-minute videos of working on the route. I'm not sure why I would do this. I kind of... Okay, so I would do it in the future as a, because I've said that once the zombie train ends, I'm going to be doing 2 under construction videos a week. I'm going to do one on the Tuesday slot and one here on the Thursday slot. Asterisk, you guys know this never comes out on Thursday because it has to wait until Friday at least. But this is the Thursday slot for me. I spend my time on Thursday doing it. And it works out fairly well for me, even with the idea of in the future doing the Tuesday slot, because Madison wants to take Mondays off, so that can be our date night, and that leaves me with Tuesday basically never having anything standing in the way aside from regular chores. This is the kind of thing that I have been waiting for since we moved into the house, which is like, finally things are settling down where I can think about when are the times that I have the most time. So yeah, this is that. Because before it was, when are the times that I have the most time? That's a funny joke. I don't have that. So, yeah, such is life. Anyway. Let's put this down here. I need to check on some things a little later. I think I do, at least. I want to know when my payday is. It should be coming up. But let's see. Last week... No, it's not this week. It's in a week. It's in a week from tomorrow or whatever. Which is still in this month. That's good. Mortgage, You don't know. Okay, is there any more to this comment? It's quite an extensive one. Thank you, Railord, for giving me all this content. Yeah. No, that's right. Sorry. Still talking about the combined surveyor-driver. Now, I don't know if they're going to get rid of the 2 of them. They may, and I don't really think it's going to have a major effect if they do. I would like to see them combine them just into one and call it a day, because maybe you can lock out, you can begin a session, and that would lock out all the surveyor commands. Actually, you know what I would expect? I would expect to have, instead of surveyor and driver, surveyor driver and driver. With the quick drive function, of course. Optional, of course. Double, of course. You know, it's the kind of thing where I would certainly expect that. Oh man, just putting down a driveway is giving me PTSD. I don't mean to downplay that. Do we have any driveways in this town yet? Because if so, I want one. No, we only have the ones that are part of existing houses. Alright, let's go up the river again. Yeah, because I couldn't see them necessarily making it so that if you're in driver, you're also always in surveyor. Because then you're opening a can of worms with people that are trying to make a session where you can't fiddle with stuff. But I don't necessarily know. We will have to see what N3V decides is the proper course of action with their game of the future. And, of course, they're releasing this stuff to testers, so I assume they're awaiting community feedback as well, and from there they'll move forward. I'm still working down here. I don't want to work down here. I want to work up there. And yet here I am. And here I am thinking about what I can do to wrap it up here as quickly as I can and then go up there. I can just leave. I don't have to spend all this time. I'm coming back later. I have to. Whatever. Still working. Still working down here. I just want this to look good. I just want it to look good. Because I want to make my screenshots look good. Typically, when I wrap up an episode under construction, I take 2 screenshots and I put them in the photo dump group and in the fan chat or whatever. And then people can go, ooh, look what you did. And then they get to see what I worked on and what I will work on. Maybe it'll entice them to watch the episode to see my line of reasoning and the things that I get up to. This needs to be filled in, but you know what? We're going to go to Adams. 1:20:51. It would make sense. Oh, hey, here it is. It would make sense to bring the tram line straight into the station and have them turn around there for a fast connection to Gilson Eastern, but I wouldn't go too far into the town with it. The industrial branch should serve as a boundary for the tram system. So he's saying down here. You know what? I like that a lot. I will cross the tracks with it. I'll have a stop here maybe, and then a loop down here, brother. And in fact, I can move this house. I can move these houses and then build the tram loop here. Which, let me just do that real quick to remind myself that this is what we're doing. Thank you, Railord, for being the only person to give me input on this, and I love it. We'll, of course, have to change this later. I'm not even going to try to make it look good. That looks just god-awful. That's the worst thing I've ever done. It's not the worst. My first attempts at the other one were probably worse. But it's just, you got to make it a constant radius. And we're like 1 spline point short, and we need to straighten this. Okay, that's pretty good. No! That's pretty good. Hey, that's pretty good. Alright, so we'll try not to mess with that too much, because that came out pretty good. but we will be running the track down there sooner or later, and I am pretty happy with that. So, buttons on your old man's coat. Let's go to Adams. Let's do some work here in Adams. Yeah, I am excited. This place could use a tram system. Hell, this place could use a cable car, or a funicular, or an aerial tramway. That's what they need here. Alright, if you can load all the trees in, that'd be great. There they are, just in time for me to take a drink of water. Water. So, last time we were here, we did put some trees down, etc., etc. We started doing work over here. I think the first thing I'm going to do is add this texturing up to the edge here. Let's see. Let me just slide this over so I keep an eye on how much time we've got. Unfortunately, we've run out of comments. Thank you, everyone, for posting your comments on this episode, or on last episode of Under Construction. I will, I will always do my best to respond to them as best I can, whatever they are. Even that time I forgot to comment on all the ones about my favorite color. For whatever reason, that was a meme. And yeah, I really do appreciate it, because not only does it give me a lot more to talk about when it comes to well, this, but it just means that I know that you guys are paying attention, that you guys are saying something, and that you guys, actually care about being here. That those views don't mean nothing. They don't mean somebody clicked on the video and went, oh, okay, and then clicked off. Even if they stuck around for the whole 2 hours, that would matter a lot less to me than somebody who comes on, scrolls through the video, gets the gist of what I'm doing or what I'm saying, and then moves on. Come on, computer. You can do it. It's the trees, man. They're in the trees. Whenever you upgrade something, your computer will find a new bottleneck. One of them for me is the hard drive. Although, right now, having 16 gigs of RAM, that's a lot less of a problem. Because the computer doesn't have to move things, Chrome tabs, in and out of hard drive space all the time now, because I'm running out of RAM and it needs to put stuff away. However, my processor is in a bad way, and I would like to add a new one of those. And I have never done that, and it's a much more involved process than a lot of the other replacements. So I'm very hesitant to do it. And also, it's the kind of thing where it's a lot trickier, not in terms of just doing it, but in terms of getting the right one. I am quite happy with the motherboard that I have, but the fact of the matter is, motherboards are only so good, and as time goes on even, you'll eventually, oh, shut up, sheep, shut up. You'll eventually run into a point where your motherboard will no longer support what you're trying to do. I know, my mom does that to me all the time. And it just won't support a better processor or whatever. It won't support more RAM, which, I have 4 slots, and I'm very, very thankful for that, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to have these 16 gigs in my computer. Because, well, I would have had to make the choice between putting the 16 gigs in the server computer or putting them in this one, and I'm not sure what I would have chosen, honestly. I really, I can deal with the stuff on my own. Other people have to deal with the issues on the server. I'm on there sometimes, but, I can let my own issues slide, but, other people are on the server, and if the server doesn't run well, they're not going to use it. So, I want to make sure that it does. Man, I miss the days when Minecraft could run on a potato. Even poorly. These days, These days, it's pretty intensive. I mean, Bedrock is less so, but who plays that anyway? Oh crap, did I use the wrong texture? Yeah, I did. Ugh! I can't believe I've done this. Wondering why that looked funny. So, yeah, now we're in this area with all the trees, and the amount of trees and stuff has significantly brought up the amount of RAM that we're using. By a full gigabyte. Just going from Mason's Landing and the valley area to over here. My Tane is now using up a full gigabyte more of RAM. Wow. Wow. That's impressive in the worst kind of way. It's like, wow, that's really taking a lot of resources. Okay, I'm going to push in just a little bit too much with these edges so that I can blast them away with the middle bit. With the ballast. Okay, slides in here. Oh, that... Damn. I'm waiting for Madison to get back to me. Because... So she's out with her friends, like I mentioned. Or, did I mention that? Whatever. I was going to be like, she's not here. We're doing this, we've got comments, we've got stuff, it's time to make Under Construction. That's how I was going to lead into this. But I didn't do that. But she's out with her friends, she's actually down at Iggy's Chowder House, and getting doughboys and stuff, probably. But the thing is, and I'm so close to the market, I almost have no excuse, at any rate. But I need I need more cheese. I need more cheese for my sandwich tomorrow. And if I don't get more cheese for my sandwich tomorrow, then I'll only have one slice of cheese, which is enough to make a sandwich. But if we're out of cheese, it means that we're out of cheese. And that's an important thing in this household. People go through cheese like nobody's business. Like, everybody uses up the cheese. For burgers, for sandwiches, for, like, tacos, or quesadillas, or, whatever. I mean, a slice of cheese is not the best for those, but people still use them when we run out of the crazy cheese. The shredded cheese. It disappears. It disappears. And originally, last time we went shopping, Madison was like, I'm going to go and get a pound of cheese. Because it'll last us a little while because we use a lot of cheese. And I was like, yeah, go for it. And then she comes back and she's like, okay, I got 3/4 of a pound of cheese. And I went, what? But I figured, it's fine. I was probably only going to get a half a pound of cheese anyway. She was doing better than I was, even if it wasn't as much as she had originally said. But then all of the cheese is gone. It's all gone. It's just not here anymore. What happened to it? Can't tell you. It's just not here anymore. So, we're out of cheese. It's like the commercial predicted. Oh god, what was it? What commercial was it? It was a commercial for Cheez-Its. We may run out of cheese. Oh yeah, it's for the Snapped. Those aren't that good. The commercial's good, but the food really is, it's okay. It's not great. There are better snacks. They're called Cheez-Its. Oh, if for a moment I can preach about something, and I probably will on the Terminus podcast as well, because I think I know what my termination is already going to be, it would be a link to the playlist for Bruce Springsteen's newest album. Yes, the man's almost 70 years old and he's still producing quality music. It is called Western Stars, and while I was concerned, just based on the name and based on the world around us, that it was going to be almost like a pop country thing. I had hoped that Bruce Springsteen would not fall to that. And I was thankfully vindicated when the album came out, and it's awesome. There are so many great songs on that album. Although my favorite, not because of the subject matter, is Tucson Train. I was sharing the album with Donna Grace, or we were discussing it, and out of the blue she goes, "Is your favorite song Tucson Train?" And I was like, internally, I'm going, God damn it. Because yes, because it is my favorite. But it is not because it has train in the title. It's because it's a really damn good song. It's been stuck in my head for multiple days now. I can't get it out. I would say Someone Please Help, but it's a really good song. You know what else has been stuck in my head for multiple days now? Miracle by Caravan Palace. It's their new song. It came out in February. If you have parents or literally anybody else around that isn't okay seeing porn, don't watch the music video. I don't know how that thing's on YouTube. But do listen to it. Because it's a good song. But yeah, absolutely look up the album Western Stars. If you want to listen to the album the whole way through, I suggest going to Bruce Springsteen's YouTube channel and scrolling down to the playlists of albums. Which I was so grateful that those actually existed. So yeah, scroll down to the playlist of albums, put on Western Stars, sit back and enjoy the ride. Because, gosh, it's good. Tucson Train, Western Stars, Wayfarer, Hitchhikin' even, it's pretty good. Sunset is really good. What's another one that's good off that album? And There Goes My Miracle, that one's okay. What's the one they released the picture for, or the video for? I can't remember. It's towards the end of the album. It's quite good. I remember. I think that was the first single that they released from the album. There was speculation that it was going to be a crossover with Taylor Swift, and I was like, oh. But at the same time, I was like, ooh, because the reason that there was speculation about that is they were both releasing songs at the exact same time. They had both dropped singles that night, and there was a countdown to both of them on their respective websites. So we didn't know if they just happened to release two different songs at the same time, which is what happened. But the alternative was they're releasing the same song, which I think I would have enjoyed. I don't dislike Taylor Swift. I don't particularly go out of my way to listen to Taylor Swift, but I don't dislike Taylor Swift. I think she would do okay. Certainly being guided by the boss would make for some awesome, would make for some awesome music, I think. She is not an untalented person. So, at any rate, it wasn't that, but I did get mildly excited that it could have been. Not as much as your average Taylor Swift fan probably was at the release of a new song in general, but, I got a little excited. Like I said, it wasn't that. It's... Oh, god damn it. I mean, the titular track... Did I say Western Stars? Because that's the titular track. It's a good one. There Goes My Miracle is pretty good. I'm like, at this point, I'm naming all the songs on the album. I'm trying to remember the one that this is, and I can't remember. Is it Western? No, it's not Western Stars. It isn't Western Stars. It's not the titular song that I'm thinking of. It's something else. It is a different song. God, this is gonna kill me. How can I not remember it? I've listened to it repeatedly. Okay. Alright, I'm sorry, but I have to look it up. Bruce Springsteen, Western Stars. Oh, Hello Sunshine! Hello Sunshine. Oh, that's a good song. It's like the depressing version of of, that one ELO song that everybody knows. Because it was in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a good song. It's a really good song. I don't want to overhype it for people. I don't want people going to listen to the album thinking they're going to have an epiphany. But I can recommend. It's pretty good. But that's what I've been listening to. I mean, I did say I was going to make a part of the timetable for that, but timetables have been spotty as of late. Mostly because I end up being busy on Sunday nights, and then I get home and it's like, who would want to do a live stream this late? Let me just go to sleep. Yeah. So, there's reasons why. It's just because I've been busy. I mean, I'm sure you guys could have guessed that reason, but it is that. I've been saying it is what it is a lot. I guess I'm just saying you gotta accept life. Yeah, of course I'm gonna put this here. Do I want to put like a concrete platform? No, I really just kind of want gravel. Even gravel is it's too much for these people. Should have just gone with dirt. Why is my face itchy? I got poison ivy on my face. I think they hit by a tree branch. What is this? Is it poison ivy? I hope it's not. Hope I didn't like scratch it and then scratch my face. But I mean, it shouldn't be a problem because, well, if you take a shower, you wash all that crap off. I've taken more than one shower since last weekend. Maybe it's just raw from shaving or something. I don't know, I don't like this. I kind of want to wash my face off. Oh, that's right. We need to finish in this cut here. This is an important thing to get done. Because once we get this part of it done, that means we can continue into RJ Canyon, and once we get RJ Canyon done, that is another huge chunk that's getting wrapped up. Because from here up to the top, there aren't too many things in the way of really interesting and unique terrain features. There are a couple, but nothing really crazy. This is the biggest thing. I really was just like, we need a big canyon, let's do that. This cut itself was, it's a feat on its own. It would certainly be a feat in real life to have a cut this deep, but not totally outrageous. Which is a lot of the time my metric. It's like, okay, is that unlikely? Yeah, maybe. Is that outrageous? No. No, okay. Can I maintain plausible deniability that this could have happened, in whatever circumstances? Yeah. Okay, good enough. Maintaining the internal logic and making it consistent is important. But you don't necessarily have to bend over backwards to make your railroad boring. It's you gotta walk a line, I think you gotta walk a pretty fine line between having a railroad that's really cool looking and entertaining and whatever, and having a railroad that's realistic. Not saying that realistic railroads or real railroads can't be downright breathtaking, and I say this as somebody, I in particular say this as somebody who's looking to going to the Cats next year, and I have not been in a very long time. But, yeah, I want it to be cool. I want it to be particularly cool. I want it to be particularly interesting, particularly unique. Having the causeway over the swamp is something special. We're going to have something like that way up. Oh, wait, we're not going to do the causeway. The causeway is part of the abandoned section of the Everett Lake. The original Everett Lake. Railroad. Mining and navigation company, not railroad. It is... Yeah. It is something. It is something. What am I saying? Why are not words coming out of my mouth? Or in the wrong order? Comma and dramedy. Comma and dramedy. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention the Orville for being a little bit more on the comedy side of the spectrum, but still dramatic enough to make a really good show. You know, if you're having a show that's based solely on comedy, it will be funny, and that will be it. It's like, oh yeah, that was pretty funny, okay, whatever. You know, there's almost nothing tying you to, between episodes. If you get involved with the characters, I think there has to be a certain degree of drama to that, or at least a certain kind. Yeah. This is going to look so much better than it was. And by better than it was, I mean better than it was when it was grid. Because, hot damn, I'm so glad we can move on from this. Because it's been around for such a long time. You know, this is one of the first areas that we did when we started working on the VMR. We got up here and we laid this area here because it's fairly close to the end. The beginning, I guess, in all of the effective beginning, as far as this map is concerned. It's the beginning. So, yeah, we're finally working our way up here. Things stagnated here for such a long time, partly because of Adams, partly because there were just other things that I was needing or wanting to work on down in the valley. But now that the valley is effectively done, except for scenery, I cannot answer that. The thingy is thingy. It's time for us to come up here and get this work done. Even down here. Which I don't... What was I putting underneath the road over here? Whatever, we'll get to that. We're doing this now. We will have to come back and do the next pass with the other kind of grass, but this is a start for the final detail pass of scenery in this area. Really, there are not too many passes that we need to do for scenery. It's really just, we do the terrain, and then we come back later and we do the copy-pasting, and then we come back after that and we do the thing. Well, actually, no, that's not true, because we add the thick grass before we do the copy-pasting. So there are at least 3 or 4 different, depending on how you measure them, scenery passes that we have to do. There is the terrain pass, which I guess, is the one that's questionable as to whether you want to call it a scenery pass or not. You have the grass pass, which sounds like the card you use to get medical marijuana. And then the tree pass, and then the detail pass. We're on the detail pass. We're wrapping it up. This is going to be our last, well, we're going to come back again because I'm not going to be able to finish this in the next couple of minutes. But hopefully next time I will remember that this is what I wanted to do for the first hour and a half of the episode, and we will actually work on this first. That said, we did a pretty good job over in Mason's Landing. I actually am quite happy with the way that turned out. I just want this to be... I want the grass to be thick enough that it's a little bit more believable. Although maybe I should have gone with the harder cliff edges for this. Like rocks instead of rocks and grass. Oh well. I really like how this looks. I really, really like this combo, and I'm glad that we've stumbled across it. Just like basically everything else in this map, we've just totally stumbled across something that looks, well, in this case, fairly excellent, I think. But, like everything else in this map. that not everything else in this map looks fairly excellent. A lot of the things in this map I think look pretty good, or else I wouldn't keep them around, but I think calling everything pretty excellent, or whatever I just said, is pushing it a little bit. There are a lot of things where we could use more detail. Not everything is, you know, the most detailed portions of Olive, I guess. I really wish that wasn't there. Okay. Well, we crossed the 2-hour mark just now. I think somebody just came in. Sounds like Madison's home. Either that or it's just the neighbors in their car. Or it's somebody robbing my car. That could always happen. So, you know. I don't know what on earth there is to steal out of my car. My tools, maybe? Okay. So that's that. We have it almost textured all the way from the station to the canyon. Like, there are still some more things we need to do, some of which are kind of basic, but for the most part, we're there. And unfortunately, you can't really see the town like I wanted to be able to, but the trees are taller than I expected. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week. Trainman out.